More than 1,600 books were banned in schools across America last year, according to a new report from PEN America. So, have both the right and the left taken cancel culture too far? John Avlon unpacks this in this week's Upon Further Review.
Free speech is under attack in America. It's a narrative that's persisted for years on the right, and conservatives have a point when it comes to college campus controversies. But they're missing one major component, and that's the subject of this week's Upon Further Review. Now, on the surface, free speech is something that should unite liberals and conservatives. After all, it's a constitutional right, and it protects all Americans. The problem, of course, is that we've seen the politicization of its application and a ton of situational ethics, leading to what might be called free speech for me, but not for thee. On the right, there have long been complaints about conservatives getting disinvited or pulling out from speeches on college campuses after pressure from student protests. And I'm not just talking about professional partisan provocateurs like Ann Coulter and Ben Shapiro. I'm talking about top-tier office holders like then Vice President Mike Pence, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, academics like Christina Hoff Sommers and Charles Murray, and even journalists like Jason Riley, to name just a few. Now, these campus controversies get covered mostly in conservative media. But as it turns out, they aren't solely a problem for speakers on the right, as Georgetown's free speech tracker details. For example, historian John Meacham was canceled from speaking at Alabama's Samford College. Former Obama-era DHS head Jay Johnson was disinvited from a speech at Vassar for his role in deporting undocumented immigrants. There were even attempts to ban President Biden from speaking at Notre Dame on the basis of his political beliefs. And that's not all. A 2018 Gallup poll found that 61% of college students say that the climate on campus prevents some people from expressing their views because others might find them offensive. Now, on the other side of the free speech equation, though, is an illiberal impulse to ban books. It's been creeping across our country. That's the conclusion of this week's report from PEN America. It details 1,648 individual books being banned in American schools in 32 states during the 21-22 school year alone. The target is disproportionately books from progressive perspectives, with 81% involving LGBT and racial identity. Now, pressure for these bans can take many forms, like the Armed Idaho effort to pressure a local school board to ban some books, some of which they didn't even carry. But more quiet efforts have been conducted to make school boards more partisan. And according to PEN America, what they call educational gag orders, proposed state restrictions on classroom teachings about race, gender, and sexuality have increased more than 250% over the last year. While the vast majority of these efforts are coming from conservatives, there's also been at least one case where a liberal librarian engaged in a literal burning of books by Trump and Ann Coulter, to which I can only say your hypocrisy is showing. Now, the point, of course, is not whether you personally agree with all these banned speakers or banned books. The point is that's irrelevant to the First Amendment. Instead, it's a test of the old classically liberal idea. I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. That's the real standard we need to reassert, because education and informed civic debate depends upon exposure to different ideas. And one of the best recent defenses of this actually came from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Mark Milley, when he was peppered by questions about critical race theory from Republican members of Congress. Listen to what he said.
I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there.
He's right. We cannot be strong and afraid of ideas. Disagree all you want, and by all means, let's have a vigorous, fact-based debate. That's essential to democracy. And yes, there are always the basic caveats. Civility is a virtue. Shouting fire in a crowded theater is not protected speech, and neither repeated lies that rise to the level of libel. But we cannot elevate feelings over facts, and there is no right not to be offended by a speaker on campus or a library book. To break out of this feedback loop of finger-pointing, we all need to do a better job of consistently defending free speech in the First Amendment, especially when the mob of the moment comes from someone on the other side of the aisle. And that's Upon Further Review.